I found a starving slime in my basement, and my farm started evolving. My basement became a monster kingdom, a cozy isekai farming fantasy. Royal soldiers surrounded my carrot field on the morning Bobo learned to carry a bucket. That was the part nobody mentioned later. Bards would sing about the siege of Green Hollow as if it began with thunder, holy banners, and a monster lord standing on the wall in a cloak of darkness. They would describe silver-armored knights marching over the hill, priests chanting purification spells, and 3 noble houses gathering their armies to put an end to the wicked farm that had dared to shelter monsters. They would probably leave out the bucket. Bobo was a blue water slime the size of a pumpkin, and on that morning, he had finally discovered that if he flattened the top of his body just enough, he could balance a wooden bucket there without spilling too much water. He bounced along the irrigation trench with the dignity of a royal butler, wobbling left, wobbling right, leaving a trail of drops behind him. I was standing in the carrot field with a watering can in one hand and mud on both knees when the first horn sounded from the southern road. Bobo stopped bouncing. The bucket slid off his head and splashed into the soil. At the bottom of the hill, sunlight flashed on helmets. One line of soldiers appeared, then another, then another. Behind them came temple knights in white cloaks, mages in blue robes, hired spearmen from the neighboring baronies, and 2 wagons carrying barrels marked with the golden flame of the Church of St. Orion. Holy water, most likely, or something worse with a nicer name. A priest climbed onto a stone and unrolled a scroll so long that the wind caught the end of it and slapped one of his own guards in the face. He cleared his throat.
Alan Blackwood, illegitimate son of Baron Blackwood, you stand accused of illegal monster breeding, unauthorized dungeon cultivation, refusal of noble taxation, harboring cursed beasts, corrupting human citizens, and establishing a sovereign settlement without royal permission.
Behind me, someone whispered. That sounds serious. I glanced back. It was Nib, our smallest goblin carpenter. He had a hammer in one hand, a half-eaten turnip in the other, and sawdust all over his ears. It is serious. Are we a sovereign settlement? Apparently. Do we get a flag? Not right now. Bobo pressed himself against my boot and trembled like a bowl of jelly in an earthquake. The priest kept reading.
You are hereby ordered to surrender all monsters, magical crops, underground facilities, dungeon cores, and unlawfully gathered residents to the custody of the temple. Refusal will be treated as rebellion against the crown and collusion with the demon realm.
I looked at the carrot rose, then at the slime, then at the army. 3 months ago, I had owned a broken house, a rusty hoe, 3 copper coins, and 1 skill called basic farming. Now the kingdom was calling me a monster lord. I sighed, picked up Bobo's bucket, and set it upright. Honestly, I only wanted to farm. 3 months earlier, nobody had wanted the land on Green Hollow Hill. That was why the Blackwood family gave it to me. Calling it a gift was generous. Calling it a sentence was more accurate. The farmhouse leaned so far to the left that I worried a strong sneeze might finish it off. The roof had 3 holes, the chimney was clogged with bird nests, the well water smelled like old socks, and the field behind the house was less a field than a battlefield where weeds had won a decisive victory. The villagers in Greyford called it Deadroot Farm. Nothing grows there. The seed seller told me when I spent 2 of my 3 copper coins on the cheapest carrot seeds in his shop. The soil went sour after the old mine collapsed. Your family knows that. They sink you there because even wolves are too proud to den in that place. Good. I like quiet neighbors. He looked me over, taking in my patched coat and the Blackwood signet ring I had hidden in my pocket instead of wearing on my hand. You're the Baron's cast-off boy, aren't you? Depends who is asking. A man who sells seeds to fools. Then yes. He snorted, but he threw in a handful of turnip seeds for free. For when the carrots die. That's very thoughtful. I carried the seeds back to Deadroot Farm under a sky the color of clean steel and told myself that this was fine. Better a rotten field than a noble house where every meal came with polite insults. Better a leaking roof than brothers who smiled while discussing how quickly I would freeze in winter. Better mud than marble. I had died once already, in another world full of convenience stores, rent, overtime, and bread eaten standing up, because sitting down meant falling asleep. When I woke in this body, with Alan Blackwood's memories stitched into mine, I expected terror. Instead, I felt a tired sort of relief. No more neon signs. No more night shifts. No more manager texting at dawn. This world had magic, monsters, dungeons, nobles, and probably 10,000 creative ways to die. But it also had soil. And I knew soil, at least in theory, from videos I watched at 3 in the morning when I was too exhausted to sleep. I pushed open the farmhouse door and a family of spiders fled across the floor as if they had been paying rent and I was the landlord. Sorry. New management. The system appeared while I was sweeping. A pale green window unfolded in the air. Territory recognized. Abandoned farmhouse bound to user, Alan Blackwood. Class, farmer. Level 1. Skills, basic farming. Special facility detected, sealed basement. I stared at the word farmer for a long time. Somewhere out there, surely, people were being reborn as dragon knights, sword saints, archmages, and chosen heroes. Somewhere, a goddess was handing out holy blades and cheat skills. I got farmer. Fair. I said at last. Honestly, fair. Then the floor creaked under the kitchen table. I moved the table aside and found a square wooden hatch hidden beneath a rug, so rotten it had become part of the floor. The hatch was sealed with an iron lock red with rust. Sealed basement. Warning, containment unstable. Estimated breach, 72 hours. That sounded less fair. I found an old shovel in the shed and broke the lock on the third swing. Cold air breathed up from below, smelling of wet stone, mushrooms, and something faintly sweet. The stairs groaned under my weight. I went down with a candle in one hand and the shovel in the other, because if there was one thing my new life had already taught me, it was that a farmer with a shovel looked slightly less edible than a farmer without one. The basement was smaller than I expected. Stone walls, dirt floor, collapsed shelves, empty barrels. In the center lay a circle of black soil marked with faded runes. The system whispered in green letters. Ancient monster nursery detected. Status, dormant, damaged, starving. Repair cost, wood X10, stone X20, weeds X30. Failure to repair will result in uncontrolled monster emergence. I read the message twice. Then I looked at the ceiling. Of course the basement is a monster nursery. Why would it be potatoes? Repairing the circle took all day. I cut dead branches until my shoulders burned, dragged stones from the ruined fence, and pulled weeds until my palms blistered. By sunset, I had the materials piled in the basement, and dirt in places dirt had no business being. When I confirmed the repair, the materials dissolved into green light. The black soil softened. The runes glowed. Something bubbled in the center of the circle. A blue slime popped out like a drop of living water. It was tiny, barely larger than an apple. It sat there trembling, transparent enough that I could see the candle flame wobbling through its body. Water slime. Condition, hungry. Temperament, timid. Recommended feed, clean water, weeds, vegetable scraps. The slime looked at me. I looked at the slime. It slowly bumped against my boot with a sound like a wet fingertip tapping glass. I had expected teeth, tentacles, acid, something dramatic. Instead, I had a starving jelly ball. I crouched, tore up a handful of weeds, and placed them beside a chipped bowl of well water. The slime covered the weeds with its body. Tiny bubbles rose inside it. After a minute, it made a faint, pleased sound. Water slime satisfaction +10. Monster nursery experience +5. Product generated. Freshwater gel X1. A marble-sized lump of clear gel rolled out from under the slime. Freshwater gel purifies small quantities of water, improves moisture retention in soil. I picked it up carefully. The slime watched me as if waiting for judgment. You might be the most useful thing in this house. It wobbled. I named it Bobo because it made a bobbing motion when happy, and because I was too tired to be poetic. Naming complete. Water slime Bobo. Growth rate increased. Basic bond established. Bobo bounced once, fell over, and rolled into the bowl. That was how Green Hollow began. Not with a sword. Not with a prophecy. With a slime eating weeds in a basement. The first week nearly broke me. By morning I worked the dead field. By afternoon I patched the roof. By evening I hauled water. By night I cleaned the basement and fed Bobo weeds, which he ate with the solemn dedication of a scholar studying forbidden texts. The soil fought me at every step. It clumped around the hoe. Stones hid under every inch of ground. Roots of old thorn bushes tangled like wire beneath the surface. I planted one test row of carrots, watered them with gel-treated water, and stared at the dirt for 10 minutes as if I could intimidate vegetables into sprouting. Bobo helped in his own way. At first, that meant producing freshwater gel and getting underfoot. Then, on the 4th day, he learned to absorb dirty water from the well bucket and spit it back cleaner. On the 5th day, he tried to water a seedbed by jumping into the bucket, tipping it over, and flooding half the row. I sat in the mud, soaked from waist to boots. Bobo quivered. "It's fine." He quivered harder. "No, really. That's basically irrigation. Very advanced farming technique." He made a tiny bubble of relief. On the 7th day, the first green shoot appeared. It was small, ridiculously small, a single line of life pushing through sour soil. I crouched beside it for a long time. Bobo bounced next to me. First successful cultivation. Farmer level increased. 1-2. Skill acquired. Quick planting. Monster nursery level increased. 1-2. New monster available. Burrow mole. That night, the nursery circle cracked open and a round brown creature dug itself out of the soil. It looked like a mole had made regrettable life choices involving a potato. It had oversized paws, tiny black eyes, and front teeth that glowed faintly yellow. Burrow mole. Condition: hungry. Abilities: soil loosening, tunnel digging, stone removal. It sniffed the air, spotted my last turnip, and charged. "Wait, that's dinner." It ate the turnip in 4 bites and looked at me with absolute confidence that more turnips existed. I had never seen an animal so certain of its employee benefits. I named him Tater. Tater repaid the turnip by plowing an entire garden row in the time it would have taken me to find where I left the hoe. He did not walk through soil. He negotiated with it aggressively. Hard ground softened. Stones rolled aside. Roots snapped. By the 2nd week, my field had 3 neat rows. By the 3rd, Bobo had split into 2 slimes. The 2nd slime was smaller, brighter, and more cautious. I named her Droplet. She followed Bobo everywhere and copied everything he did, including his mistakes. Together, they flooded the cabbage patch twice, cleaned the well water, and discovered that if they rolled over laundry, they could wash clothes better than I could. My life became strangely peaceful. It was not easy. My back hurt. My hands cracked. I burned stew more than once. Rain came through the roof despite my repairs. A fox stole my first 2 eggs after I traded for a half-dead hen in Greyford. But every day, something improved. 1 more board on the wall. 1 more row planted. 1 more barrel of clean water. 1 more bounce from Bobo when I praised him. Then Leora fell through my fence. It happened at dusk, when the sky was purple and the trees beyond the hill had gone dark. I was in the yard arguing with Tater about whether he had buried my hammer on purpose when a shape stumbled out of the brush and hit the ground hard. She was a girl around my age, maybe a little older, with silver hair cut unevenly at her shoulders and a cloak torn in 3 places. Blood ran from a bite on her arm. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp even through pain. Behind her, gray shapes moved between the trees. Wolves. Not ordinary wolves. Gray fangs. Bigger than dogs, lean as starvation, with bone-white ridges along their jaws. The girl lifted her head. "Please, don't let them take me." My first instinct was to shut the door. A sensible person would have shut the door. A heroic person would have drawn a sword. I had a hoe, 2 slimes, 1 mole with a turnip problem, and a strong desire not to be eaten. I dragged her inside anyway. The first wolf hit the door hard enough to crack the frame. Bobo flattened himself in terror under the table. "Stay down." I wasn't planning to dance. The second impact splintered the latch. I braced the door with my shoulder. Outside, claws scraped wood. A gray muzzle forced through the crack, teeth snapping inches from my face. Something blue shot past my knee. Bobo launched himself through the air and slammed into the wolf's nose with all the force of an angry water balloon. The wolf yelped. Droplet followed, missed completely, hit the wall, bounced off, and somehow landed on the second wolf's eyes. Tater erupted through the floorboards like a furry cannonball. He hit the third wolf in the ribs and sent it tumbling into the woodpile. "Good boy." Tater paused mid-battle, pleased. "Later. Fight now." The battle was chaos. Bobo spat water into one wolf's mouth until it choked. Droplet turned the floor slick. Tater dug tunnels under their feet. I swung the hoe with all the grace of a man who had once watched someone else chop firewood in a video. When it ended, 3 gray fangs lay unconscious in the yard. One wall was broken, the table was upside down, and Bobo had somehow acquired a wolf tooth stuck inside his body. He looked very proud of it. Greyfang wolves defeated X3. Farmer level increased. 2-3. Monster companions gained experience. Monster nursery absorbed residual magic. New monster available, Greyfang pup. The girl stared at Bobo, then at Tater, then at me. Are you? She asked slowly. A monster tamer? No. A druid? No. A forbidden dungeon cultist? I really hope not. She sank back against the wall. Then what are you? I looked at the ruined room, the muddy floor, the trembling slimes, the mold chewing on a chair leg, and the unconscious wolves outside. A farmer. She closed her eyes. That explains nothing. Her name was Leora Vale. She had been a scout for an adventuring party called the Silver Pike. Her class was Monster Speaker, which sounded impressive until she explained that it mostly meant she could feel whether monsters were angry, hungry, frightened, or pretending not to understand instructions. Adventurers want fireballs, she said the next morning while I changed the bandage on her arm. Or healing, or sword skills. Nobody pays for someone who can tell them the goblin is upset because they stepped on its mushrooms. That seems useful. It is useful if your party listens. Mine didn't. Her voice stayed calm, but her fingers tightened around the cup of tea I had given her. The Silver Pike had used her to detect ambushes until the job turned dangerous. When the Greyfangs attacked, the leader cut her pack straps and shoved her down a slope to slow the monsters. I heard one of the wolves. Not words. More like hunger and fear. They weren't hunting for fun. Something drove them out of their den. I looked toward the basement hatch. The nursery had absorbed the wolves' magic. Greyfang pups might appear soon. If stronger monsters were moving nearby, Deadroot Farm would not stay quiet. Leora noticed Bobo peeking from behind the stove. The slime is worried. You can tell? He thinks I am going to eat him. Nobody is eating Bobo. Bobo wobbled in relief. Leora stared. He understood that. He understands tone. Also snacks. Mostly snacks. She stayed one more day because of her injury. Then another because rain washed out the road. Then another because Bobo refused to let her leave without finishing the soup he had helped water. By the end of the week, she was repairing fence posts, teaching me how to skin Greyfangs, and translating Tater's complaints about carrot distribution. He says he does the work of 3 moles and receives the vegetables of 1. He ate 5 turnips yesterday. He says those were emotional support turnips. Tell him the farm does not recognize that category. Leora's mouth twitched. It was the first time I saw her almost smile. On the 10th day, she stood at the gate with her old pack on her shoulder. Greyford has a posting board. I can probably find another party. You could. They might not throw me to wolves this time. They might not. She looked toward the field. Bobo and Droplet were attempting to roll a water barrel together. Tater was supervising from atop a pile of carrots, which meant he was eating while others worked. Do you need a scout? Not really. Her shoulders fell a little. But I need someone who can tell me when my employees are negotiating behind my back. She looked at me. Employees? Bobo has seniority. Tater is management, unfortunately. This time, she did smile. Then I want meals, a bed that doesn't leak, and equal voting rights in turnip-related disputes. The bed leaks less than the ceiling. That is not the comfort you think it is. Welcome to Deadroot Farm. She glanced at the fields and the basement hatch. We are changing that name. The first villagers came because of water. Greyford's east well turned muddy after heavy rain. 3 families carried buckets up the hill, embarrassed and desperate. They had heard rumors that the Baron's unwanted son had somehow cleaned the Deadroot well. The first man, a miller named Joss, would not step past the gate. No offense, young lord, he said, which meant offense was definitely coming. But people say you keep strange creatures. Bobo chose that moment to bounce across the yard with a cabbage leaf stuck to his head. Joss froze. His little daughter, Mina, leaned around his leg. It's cute. Mina. Bobo stopped. The cabbage leaf slid down over his face. He thinks they are here to judge his hat. I removed the leaf. This is Bobo. He purifies water. He does not eat villagers. Has he ever eaten a villager? No. Has he tried? He once tried to eat a soap bar. Does that count? Mina giggled. I dropped a piece of freshwater gel into their bucket. The muddy water cleared slowly, brown swirling into pale gold, then nearly transparent. Joss stared. His wife crossed herself in the temple fashion, but she did not refuse the bucket. The next day they came back with eggs. By the end of the week, 3 more families came. Some paid with coins. Most paid with things more useful than coins: nails, jars, old rope, seed potatoes, a cracked grindstone, a saw missing one tooth. Bobo became famous among children. This was inconvenient because Bobo was terrified of children. Mina solved the problem by giving him a red ribbon. Now he is brave. Bobo did not look brave. He looked like a pudding attending court. But he kept the ribbon. The first adventurers came because of soup. Leora had started making stew from carrots, wild onions, and glow mushrooms that grew near the nursery circle. The stew restored stamina and warmed the body from the inside. We sold bowls for 1 copper each to travelers brave enough to ignore rumors. A swordswoman with a scar over one eyebrow took 1 bite, stared at the bowl, and ordered 3 more. What's in this? Vegetables. Don't lie to me. Vegetables don't taste useful. Magic vegetables. Better. Her party bought stew, water gel, and 2 bundles of dried glow mushrooms. They left at dawn and returned a week later with a wounded porter whose leg had been badly burned by acid. Leora did not hesitate. Bobo, droplet, clean water. Mallow, bring soft moss. Mallow was the first mushroom person. He had appeared after the nursery reached level 3, along with 16 others who stepped out of a newly opened cavern beneath the basement. They were knee-high, round-bodied, and wore their glowing caps like hats. When they first emerged, they bowed so deeply that 3 toppled over. Mushroomkin colony requests settlement. I accepted because refusing polite mushrooms felt morally wrong. Mallow became their elder because he was the tallest by half an inch and owned a stick. He brought moss. Bobo cleaned the wound, and Leora spoke softly to the terrified porter until his breathing slowed. The next morning the fever broke. The adventurers told everyone. That was when Deadroot Farm began becoming Green Hollow, though none of us knew it yet. People came with small problems at first. A broken cartwheel, a sick goat, a field too dry, a cellar full of biting beetles, a boy whose uncontrolled spark magic kept setting his sleeves on fire. Monsters came too. A Greyfong pup with a thorn in its paw. A goblin child who had been chased out of the forest for being too small to raid and too clumsy to steal. A fire lizard hatchling caught in a hunter's trap. Each arrival created a new argument. We cannot keep a goblin in the pantry. I told Leora. The goblin child, later named Nib, hugged a sack of flour and shook. Leora folded her arms. He says the pantry feels safe. He ate half the flour. He says he was testing it for poison. With his mouth. He is very committed to safety. Nib's hands were quick, and once we convinced him that food would arrive regularly without theft, he proved able to repair shelves, weave baskets, and build a surprisingly sturdy stool from broken fence wood. He also apologized to every nail before hammering it, which slowed construction but improved morale. The fire lizard was worse. He sneezed sparks, set my sleeve on fire, and tried to sleep in the oven. I named him Ham because he stole a smoked ham from a trader's pack and then looked at me with the pure confidence of a creature destined for greatness. Leora said the name was terrible. Ham loved it. Ham's gentle heat dried mushrooms, fired clay pots, baked bread, and gave us our first real product beyond vegetables: Green Hollow travel biscuits. They were ugly, hard as roof tiles, and restored stamina during long marches. Adventurers bought them by the sack. Then came the day Baron Blackwood remembered I existed. He did not come himself, of course. Men like my father sent consequences in polished boots. My half-brother Leon arrived with 6 soldiers, a tax clerk, and a wagon large enough to carry away everything I had spent 2 months building. Leon looked like the legitimate son of a noble house should look. Blonde hair combed perfectly, cloak clean despite the muddy road, sword decorated but sharp, smile polite enough to be an insult. He dismounted at the gate and surveyed the fields. Carrot rows, cabbage beds, water channels, mushroom drying racks, a new chicken coop, Nib repairing a fence while pretending not to be visible, Bobo hiding behind a bucket with half his body sticking out. Leon's smile thinned. You have been busy, Alan. Farming does that. Father will be pleased that Blackwood land remains productive. There it was. Leora moved closer to me. Tater surfaced from a tunnel near the gate and narrowed his tiny eyes. Leon pulled a parchment from his clerk. By order of Baron Blackwood, all harvests produced on this estate are subject to noble claim. Given your inability to manage land independently, Father has decided to reclaim direct control. You may remain as tenant overseer. You will surrender 9/10 of all produce and all unusual livestock. Unusual livestock? Bobo squeaked. Leon smiled. Slimes, moles, whatever else you have collected. If they have value, they belong to the estate. I felt something cold settle in my chest. When I was starving, the land was mine. When the roof leaked, the land was mine. When wolves came through the fence, the land was mine. Now that carrots were growing, the land belonged to the family. No. Leon's eyebrows lifted. The soldiers shifted. Excuse me? No. The word was small, but it landed like a stone. Leon stepped close enough that only I could hear his next words. Do not embarrass yourself. You are alive because Father allowed it. You eat because his name protects you. This little mud patch does not make you important. Behind him, Mina stood at the road with her mother. They had come for gel and stopped when they saw soldiers. The miller watched from farther down the hill. Two adventurers at the soup table pretended not to listen while clearly listening. I wanted to shout. I wanted to order Bobo to drown the wagon and Tater to bite Leon's polished boots off. Instead, I smiled. Give me 3 days to prepare the accounts. Leon relaxed, assuming he had won. Good. You are learning. He left with the wagon empty. That night, no one slept. We gathered in the basement nursery. The room had expanded far beyond its original walls. Glow mushrooms lit the ceiling. Slime channels trickled along stone grooves. Burrow mole tunnels branched into storage rooms and root cellars. The mushroomkin stood in a nervous cluster. Nib hid behind Leora and clutched his hammer. We can leave. Take what we can carry. Hide in the eastern woods. And when the next noble wants what we build. She had no answer. I placed my hand on the nursery core, a green crystal root that had formed under the old rune circle. I don't want to fight, but if we cannot protect the farm, then nobody who comes here will ever be safe. The system answered. Resources available for territory upgrade. Freshwater gel X46. Greyfong cores X3. Glow mushrooms X112. Carrots X208. Stone X174. Wood X91. Community trust? Low but growing. Community trust? The system tracks that? Apparently the farm cares about whether people like us. Tater squeaked. He says he has always been popular. We invested everything. The floor trembled. Walls unfolded into new passages. Wooden roots pierced stone and formed support beams. A wide cavern opened beyond the nursery, lit by clusters of blue mushrooms. Shallow pools filled with clean water. Small dens formed for Greyfong pups. A workshop space appeared where Nib immediately gasped as if seeing a temple. Monster nursery level increased. 4-5. Territory type updated. Abandoned farm - monster farmstead. Facility unlocked. Defensive root network. Facility unlocked. Communal hearth. Settlement capacity increased. New title acquired. Suspicious monster farmer. Suspicious? That's rude. Mallow tapped his elder stick and gave a solemn nod, as if agreeing that the system lacked manners. For 3 days, we prepared. Not weapons. Not exactly. Water channels were redirected under the yard. Burrow mole tunnels were reinforced below the road. Mushroomkin planted brightcap clusters that could flash hard enough to blind without burning. Nib built collapsible fence sections that looked weak but folded into barriers. Ham heated stones that could produce smoke when dropped into wet straw. Leora trained with the Greyfong pups, not as a commander, but as a listener. She learned the difference between fear hunger, prey hunger, play hunger, and tater hunger, which was apparently its own category. On the 3rd morning, Leon returned with 12 soldiers and a low-ranking mage. He found me sitting at a table outside the gate with tea, bread, and the account book. Finally behaving? I prepared the accounts. I opened the book. Page 1 read, "Nothing you can take." Leon stared. The yard erupted. Water surged from hidden channels, turning the road into slick mud. Tater's moles collapsed the ground beneath the wagon wheels. Brightcap mushrooms flashed. Soldiers shouted, blind and stumbling. Greyfong pups darted between legs. tearing belts and bootlaces instead of flesh. Ham smoke stones filled the air with thick, white clouds. The mage raised his staff. Nib dropped from the roof onto his back, screamed in terror, and accidentally knocked him unconscious with a hammer. Leon drew his sword, furious and frightened. You are harboring monsters. I stood across from him. I am employing residents. They are things. Bobo rolled forward with his red ribbon tied like a warrior's headband. The slime was shaking. He was still afraid of strangers, loud noises, and most spoons. But he placed himself between Leon and the mushroomkin anyway. Leora's voice turned cold. Bobo says you smell like someone who takes food from smaller creatures. Leon lunged. Bobo spat a water ball into his face. The fight ended with Leon tied in root vines, the soldiers disarmed, the wagon sunk axle deep in mud, and the tax clerk offering to rewrite the order if we stopped the goblin from apologizing to his boots. I let them go. Leon looked back from the road, face red with humiliation. Father will not forgive this. He never forgave me for existing. I'm used to it. After Leon's failed collection, the farm changed faster. Fear should have driven people away. Instead, it made them curious. The villagers had seen soldiers come to steal food and leave empty-handed without being killed. They had seen monsters defend children and slimes clean water. They had seen a goblin return a dropped coin because Leora told him keeping it would make people sad. Trust did not arrive all at once. It came in awkward visits and small bargains. Joss the miller asked if a burrow mole could help repair the collapsed drainage behind his mill. Tater demanded 3 turnips and a written acknowledgement of his expertise. Joss laughed until he realized Leora was serious. Old Mara, who sold herbs, came for glow mushrooms and ended up teaching the mushroomkin which forest plants were medicine and which were for husbands who deserve a stomachache. A boy named Finn, whose spark magic burned holes in his sleeves, came to Green Hollow after his parents begged for help. Hem took one look at him, sneezed flame, and sat on his lap. The boy stopped shaking. Fire, it turned out, was less frightening when a lizard treated it like warm soup. The first real turning point came with a pregnant woman named Elsha. She arrived during a storm, carried on a cart by her husband. Their village midwife was sick. The road to town was flooded. Elsha was pale, sweating, and in pain too early. Leora looked at me. I looked at the basement. We brought her down into the communal hearth, where the air was warm and clean. Bobo and Droplet purified water. Mallow brewed a moss tea. Ham heated stones. The mushroomkin dimmed their caps to a soft glow. Greyfong pups kept nervous villagers away from the door. I was useless except for carrying things and trying not to faint. Leora was not useless. She moved like someone who had spent years being told her gift was a burden and had finally found a place where every whisper mattered. She listened to Elsha's breathing, to the frightened pulse of the unborn child, to the emotional hum of the monsters around us. Bobo, more water. Mallow, less smoke from the tea. Ham, warmth, not heat. Alan, stop looking like you are about to die. I am helping emotionally. You are upsetting the slimes. Hours later, a baby cried in the underground glow. Elsha named her daughter Mira. When the storm ended, half of Greyford knew a human child had been born safely in the so-called monster basement. The next day, the system changed. Community trust increased significantly. Territory type updated. Monster Farmstead Dash, Green Hollow Settlement. Facility unlocked. Surface housing. Facility unlocked. Public well. New skill acquired. Hearth stewardship. That was the day we stopped calling it Deadroot Farm. Leora suggested Green Hollow because the hill folded around the land like cupped hands, and because even underground, everything seemed to grow toward green light. Mallow suggested Great Mushroom Sanctuary. Tater suggested Turnip Authority. Nib suggested Safe Place, then became embarrassed when everyone went quiet. In the end, the sign at the road read, Green Hollow. Water, food, repairs, and shelter. Do not kick the slimes. The last line was necessary. End of episode 1.